Hi, thank you for joining us today for Pinnacol Assurance's Situational Awareness Training. I'm Joel Nobles. I've been in the safety field since 2007 and I've been with Pinnacol Assurance since 2015. In 2007, I got my start in safety while serving in the Air Force. During my time there, I responded to various different types of calls on varying levels. One particular situation has always stuck with me throughout my years in the field. It was a normal day. We were going about doing our normal stuff and we got a call. When we got that call, we went out to this aircraft hangar, and once we arrived on scene, what we discovered was that an individual had gotten his arm stuck in the wing of an aircraft. Once we gathered all the information of what was going on there, we had to take that to the wing commander, and the wing commander had to make one of two decisions. He had to make a decision to either decommission a $300 million piece of equipment or remove this gentleman's arm. Ultimately, he chose to cut the wing of the aircraft and decommission the piece of equipment. So how did we end up in this situation? Well, this gentleman had dropped a tool while doing his task and it fell down to the fuel tank of this aircraft. Well, as you can imagine, it can't stay there, but without thinking, he just stuck his arm down into this hole to reach for the tool. In the process, he got his entire arm stuck in that hole. So in this scenario, what do you think would be this employee's blind spots? Well, ultimately, had he stopped and thought about what was going on around him, he would have been able to prevent this whole situation from occurring. This is what we call situational awareness. Stopping and thinking and looking at what's going on around us so we can make informed decisions and be able to instruct others. For most of us, it might just be a reminder that we always need to pay attention to our surroundings. This allows us to be able to identify hazards, anticipate what could go wrong, and knowing what to do to prevent those hazards from becoming a problem. Now, most of us are probably thinking at this point, Joel, I'm not going to stick my arm in a wing of an aircraft. But let's think about a blind spot you may have had where you ended up in a similar situation or someone you know. So let's take a minute and test our own blind spots with a few exercises.
Here's your challenge. How many times is the yellow backpack passed? Go. So the yellow backpack was passed 17 times. But how aware were you? Did you notice that our scene moved outside? What about the student who put on a hat and switched books? Or the woman dropping the suspicious package?
So how many changes were you able to identify? What made it challenging for you to spot those changes? Now that we've warmed up your observation skills, let's try that exercise again.
Here's your challenge. How many people in orange shirts get subs? Go. Seven people in orange shirts got subs. But what else did you see? Did you notice the ice cream truck change to a pizza truck? Did you notice the glasses? What about the man leaving the suspicious package next to the truck? Your next challenge, be aware of your surroundings.
So how many changes were you able to identify this time? If we focus our attention on more than one or two items at a time, we tend to lose situational awareness. Our mind is always gathering information, but it also rejects information that it deems unimportant. A common practice that many of us use is a checklist. Sometimes they can cause us to become highly focused on the items that are listed on the checklist. Now, I'm not saying checklists are a bad thing. I use them myself. However, they can cause you to become unaware of other situations that could be going on that are beyond what's listed on the checklist. The goal of situational awareness training is to help you develop the skills you need to help you identify a safe and unsafe condition. In order to do so, we need to recognize that we have blind spots. So let's look at a few things like past, present, and future. With past, one way we can identify the blind spots of situations that have already occurred is through incident investigations. This is where we go through what occurred in a situation where we can identify gaps in our process that allowed an incident to occur. Once we identify those gaps, then we can implement processes in our procedures today to help prevent reoccurrence. With present, is it as simple as taking a look around at what's going on in our current job task to help prevent an incident from occurring. With future, this could be a process called a JSA, which is a job safety analysis, or a JHA, which is a job hazard analysis. There are many different terms and they all serve the same purpose. We want to identify the tasks that we are getting ready to do, the hazards that are associated with those tasks, and then identify what are we going to do to prevent them from becoming a problem for us. Now, let's look at a common practice we like to call, if you see something, say something. This is not an uncommon practice. It has been around for a very long time. Most of us have heard this or even practiced it in our normal lives. But when we implement it into the workplace, we need to make sure that employees understand that if they see a hazard, they need to say something about the hazard. The first thing that they need to do is they need to remove themselves from the hazard. Then they need to communicate that hazard. If they can, they should eliminate the hazard. If not, they need to find the person that can. So let's think about a time where you are a new employee on the job and you identified a hazard, but it wasn't your responsibility to fix that hazard. It was your coworkers. How did you respond? Did you approach your coworker and ask them to fix the problem? Did you ask their supervisor to fix the problem? Or did you choose to say nothing at all? So let me tell you about a personal story of mine where I chose to stop and say something. One day I was driving to my in-laws' house, and while I was on the way there with my family, I saw some utility workers working in a roadway. They happened to be in a trench, and they were working unprotected. My in-laws didn't live too far away, so I drove my family over there, I dropped them off, and I came back. When I arrived on scene, I introduced myself to the employees working in the trench. And they let me know, once I asked them if they had a trench box available to them, that they did have a trench box, but they also let me know that I was being very inconvenient for them and slowing them down in their work process. So in that moment, I could have just left, but what I chose to do instead was to make a phone call. Because what they didn't know is I had a close working relationship with their company. So I spoke with their supervisor, and he let me know that, hey, I appreciate you calling me and letting me know, I'll take care of it. Within a few seconds of hanging up the phone, the foreman on site, his phone rang, and he had a conversation with his supervisor, and they proceeded to remove themselves from that unprotected trench. As you can imagine, I received pushback in that scenario. And it wasn't easy for me, and it won't be easy for you. But I found a workaround to ensure that the workers were safe in the job that they were performing. Throughout my years in the field, I have worked very hard to create good habits for myself to be able to handle situations such as that. Because whenever you receive pushback from an employee, it's never easy. It creates confrontation. But you need to create good habits for yourself in your daily routine to make dealing with pushback easier. For example, I can't control what goes on outside of my house, but I can control what comes into my house. So every night after I put my kids to bed, I go down and I recheck all the doors in my house to make sure they're locked, even though I know I locked them when I came in earlier that day. Now, you may be asking, Joel, how does workers working in an unprotected trench and keeping your doors locked at night correlate? I don't understand the connection. They connect because I have checked my doors. I have stopped and talked to the workers that I see doing an unsafe act. I have done everything I can do to prevent something bad from happening. These are simple things that you can do every day to help prevent bad things from occurring in your own workplace. For this training to be effective, it is important for us to build habits that increase situational awareness. Here's some things that you can do in your own operations. Stop and take a look around. If there's a hazard present, ask yourself, can I do something about it? Do I need to tell someone about it? Who do I need to tell about it? And what does the communication look like at our facility? To promote situational awareness at your organization, you need to have some processes in place for employees to be able to report their findings. As you begin to implement these processes at your organization, consider the following questions. What processes do we have in place today? How are these processes communicated to our staff? If a hazard is present, how do they communicate that to everyone around them? And then if an injury occurred, how are we communicating those outcomes? By promoting a culture of safety within your organization, you're naturally going to promote a culture of situational awareness. To do this, it's important to have a shared understanding of what situational awareness means, to create habits to identify your surroundings and empower employees to prevent hazards from becoming an emergency. Thank you for participating in today's training.